My mom calls me selfish for wanting to buy a house when my sister is struggling after her second divorce, but I'm going ahead with it anyway, and now she wants me to live with her. It's not going to happen. I'm here because I feel very stupid right now. I can't understand my mom's intention when she said that I, at 32, shouldn't buy a house just because my 36-year-old sister would feel hurt. My sister, who is bankrupt, divorced twice, without judgment, and living off the money her ex-husband gives her, would feel bad if I buy a house with the money I've earned through hard work. Seriously, it's not like I'm going to follow her advice, but I'm baffled that she dissuaded me this way. You see, I've always been the responsible one. I took my studies seriously, worked hard, and put all my effort into securing a decent future for myself. My sister, not so much. She is 4 years older than me, and I've seen her make terrible decisions in life up close. She's always depended on someone else to fix her problems. My mom has always had a weakness for her, which created a rift between my mom and me. 3 months ago, after years of saving and planning, I finally decided to buy my own house. It wasn't an impulsive decision. I've been working hard for over a decade, living frugally in a miserable apartment, saving every penny to one day have my own place. Last quarter, I received a nice bonus for reaching 10 years at the company, along with a substantial raise. I felt it was the right time to invest in something tangible, the house I've dreamed of since I was a child. I grew up in a dysfunctional family. My parents weren't married. My dad left us when I was 2, and he never contacted us again. My mom said she tried every way to get child support, but he just disappeared. He reappeared in our lives when we were adults, apologized, and wanted to rebuild the relationship, but we keep our distance. That's a story for another time. In short, my mom was a single mother and worked 2 jobs to raise us. I also started working while I was still in high school. We always lived in a rented apartment, and money was always a problem. So, I grew up with the dream of having a house one day. I had everything planned. I had even visited some properties within my budget. But before taking the final step, I thought it would be respectful to talk to my mom about it. I wasn't seeking her permission. After all, I'm an adult. But I thought she would be happy for me, even proud. And that's why I wanted to tell her. I couldn't have been more wrong. When I told my mom about my plans to buy a house, instead of being happy or congratulating me, she looked at me with surprise and disapproval. Her first reaction was, "Are you really going to buy it, or is it just a whim?" I was stunned. What kind of question is that? I hesitated and replied, "Yes, I really want to buy it, and it's not just a thought, it's my dream to have a house. I've been saving for years, and it's time to have a place of my own." She pursed her lips and said, "I don't think it's a good idea." I was confused because it wasn't what I expected. I asked her why not, and she just dismissed it by saying, No, it's not the right time for anything." When I insisted on an explanation, she said, "Your sister is going through a tough time right now. She's already struggling a lot. Can you imagine how she would feel if you buy a house when she can barely keep a roof over her head?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My sister's financial situation has always been complicated. She's been divorced twice. She married for the first time when she was just 18. Everyone warned her not to make that decision so soon, but she still dropped out of high school right before the final exams and got married. She divorced at 23, remarried at 27, and divorced again at 33. Her second divorce was a messy separation from her unfaithful husband, who still pays her the minimum required for support, barely enough to survive. I can't say I was entirely surprised when her marriage fell apart. I predicted it long before it actually happened. She has a habit of spending afternoons with my mom, which drove her husband away. I don't justify his infidelity at all, but, she is also one of the reasons he distanced himself from her. They used to have very ugly fights because she didn't spend time with him. She didn't go out with him most of the time. She was glued to my mom. They would go shopping, to the movies, and take walks together, leaving her husband alone at home. I don't know why, but she just loves spending every afternoon at my mom's house. They sit and gossip about anything and everything. My sister has always been a source of stress for me. After her first divorce, instead of picking herself up and finding a way to be self-sufficient, she moved back in with my mom. She has a very carefree attitude toward life and expects the best of everything. She dropped out of high school to marry the love of her life. After that love fell apart, Mom asked her to go back to school, but she didn't. She worked in some jobs here and there, drifted around most of the time, and then got another loser, which resulted in another divorce. I even asked her to acquire some skills and get a job, but her lazy butt refused to move. She relies completely on the crumbs her ex-husband is legally obligated to give her and the endless support from our mom. The interesting thing is that Mom happily supports her, but I had to manage on my own. I worked hard to complete my education, juggling jobs and studies until I finally graduated. I wasn't handed anything on a silver platter. Every penny I saved was through my own effort, and now I wanted to use that money to secure my future. But my mom wasn't pleased. I was almost in tears with her reaction and replied saying, "I've worked very hard for this. I shouldn't have to put my life on hold just because she's not in a good situation." But Mom said, "You don't understand how she feels. She has nothing. You have everything, a good job, savings, and even a boyfriend. Tomorrow you could announce that you're getting married, and I couldn't say no. But a house? No, it's too much for your sister to handle." I told Mom it wasn't my fault if my sister's life was falling apart. She needs to take control of her life like I did. But Mom's final argument was, she's your sister, and families shouldn't rub each other's success in the misery of others. This wasn't the first time my mom tried to make me feel guilty for putting my sister's needs above my own, but this time it was too much. She was asking me to sacrifice something I'd worked for years, just to avoid hurting my sister's feelings. And what if my sister never improves financially? Does that mean I should sacrifice my own happiness? Mom was offended, thinking I was belittling my sister. I wasn't belittling her, but it's true she's had years to recover. It's not like this situation is new. Her situation has always been miserable, and she has already accepted it. Mom yelled at me, saying my sister is still recovering from her husband's infidelity and that I need to be patient. She said, "If you have nothing better to do with the money, give it to your sister." She wanted to start her online business but hasn't been able to do so due to lack of funds. Her advice horrified me. I told her that would be the last thing I would do with my money. I'd rather spend it on a luxury vacation than give it to my sister when I know it won't be of any use. Our discussion turned into an argument. I tried to make her understand my point that her divorce happened a long time ago, and she needs to move on, if she hasn't already, and sort out her life. Her personal crisis has nothing to do with my goals, but she wouldn't budge. She kept insisting that me buying a house would only make things worse, making my sister feel even worse about her situation. Finally, I set a boundary and told her, "No matter what you say or think, I don't care. I'm going ahead with my plan. I'm so distressed right now. How can parents be so cruel and insensitive sometimes? It makes me question my own sanity, whether I'm seeing things as they are or if I'm overreacting." Update 1. Thank you for cheering me on, and yes, you can congratulate me, because I have a new house. Nothing luxurious, just a 2-bedroom house with a spacious living room and a small front garden. Although it's in a nice neighborhood. Sorry for not updating sooner. I've been busy setting up the house. Here's the new update. As I mentioned in my first post, I bought the house despite my mom's objections. I knew I wanted it for myself, regardless of whether my mom liked it or not. I didn't even inform her about it. It wasn't out of spite, I just couldn't deal with another round of emotional manipulation. I thought they would eventually find out, and I'd deal with the consequences at that time. It hurt because it was something important to me, and I wanted my family to celebrate the moment. I wanted to involve her in the process, but she chose to sabotage it. After the last argument, I kept my distance from my family. My mom sent messages and called several times, but I didn't respond. She thought I was angry. Her last message was, "I know you're angry with me, but trust me, this is best for you and your sister. We're family, and we shouldn't hurt each other. When you calm down, you'll see how good it is not to rub the house in your sister's face." I let it go and waited for the news to reach them. Eventually, it came sooner than I expected. A couple of weeks after moving in, I posted a selfie in the front garden with a coffee, nothing too revealing. I didn't give it much thought. I was proud of my new space and wanted to share it with my friends. I made sure to hide the post from anyone who could leak the information to my mom and sister, but I forgot to remove a church friend of my mom's. She saw it and mentioned it during Sunday prayer, and within hours, my phone started blowing up with messages from my mom and sister. I was busy and didn't see the messages. I didn't even realize my mom's friend had seen my post until I received a call from my mom. It had been months since she last called me, so I answered. As soon as I did, she launched into a tirade. "How could you do this? Do you know how bad your sister is? And you go and buy a house without even telling us? What were you trying to prove by doing it behind our backs and satisfying your damn ego?" Instead of hanging up, I decided to confront the issue. I said, "I didn't think it was necessary to inform you. I knew how you would react." My mom interrupted me, saying, "Of course, you know how I react. You did it behind our backs anyway." I could hear my sister in the background telling my mom, "I told you she doesn't care about us. She's just looking for a chance to make me look bad." This made my blood boil. She always plays the victim, always needing to be pampered and protected. Meanwhile, I was expected to put my life on hold to sacrifice my own happiness for her sake. Mom accused me of being selfish and arrogant, saying I didn't care about other people's feelings. This led to an ugly fight. I told her I was proud of making a decision for myself, even if she didn't like it. The conversation ended with my mom hanging up the phone. I was trembling with rage and frustration, but I also felt relief. I did what I wanted and didn't give in to her pressure. Last week was my birthday. Neither of them wished me a happy birthday or invited me for Thanksgiving yesterday. It would be a lie to say it didn't hurt. Of course, it hurt, but I'm glad I saw their true colors. I'll stay out of contact with them. If they don't need me, I don't need them either. Update 2. I thought this would end when I decided to cut contact with them, but it didn't. Last week, my mom and sister showed up at my door unannounced. This happened 2 months after they found out about the house. I was surprised to see them there, and the naive part of me thought they were there to make things right, so I invited them in. Before I could offer them a tour of the house, they started wandering around on their own. I could see how my mom was calculating and planning. I knew whatever was coming next wasn't going to be good. Her first line was, "This is a nice house, really, very nice." I didn't know what else to say other than, "Thank you." Her compliment also confused me. My sister said nothing, just kept wandering around the living room. One of my rooms is empty. I wanted to turn it into a study, but I haven't bought the furniture yet. My mom went into that empty room and said, "Pixie can stay in this room. It has a perfect view of the garden and would help her get over her depression." I was in shock. I wasn't even sure I'd heard her correctly. I asked what she meant and she replied, "This house, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, is perfect for your sister. She can move in here with you, just until she gets back on her feet." I stared at her, astonished. "Are you serious?" I asked. She responded, "Of course I'm serious," and looked at me as if I were the unreasonable one. She needs a place to live, a place where she can recover from everything she's been through. This house is perfect for that. She's living in a dark apartment and can't get over her gloomy life. She needs light, and this house would give her the freshness and positive vibes she needs to move forward with her life. I was furious. "No, it's not. I'm not going to let her move in with me. I bought this house because I wanted a place for myself, not for her to get over her superficial depression. I'm not going to sacrifice my peace for her." My mom got furious with me and said, "Your sister is your family. How can you be so cruel?" Her argument was that she is my sister, that she has been through a lot, and that I have the means to help her, so it's my duty as a sister to help. It's not like I've never helped my sister. I've given her money when she was in a tough situation. I've bought her gifts, dresses, shoes, and bags whenever I got a raise on her birthdays and at Christmas. What more do they expect from me? I was burning with rage, but I controlled my emotions and said, "I've given enough. I've sacrificed enough. I've spent my whole life doing what you and Pixie wanted, and I'm done. This is my life, my house, and I'm not going to let anyone take it away from me." Until then, Pixie had been sitting in a corner, dejected. She finally spoke with a pathetic voice, "I just don't understand why you're being so mean. I thought we were family, but sadly, you don't consider us anything." I wanted to confront her for her crocodile tears, but that would have diverted the conversation. So I said, "We are family, but that doesn't mean I have to give up everything I've worked for just to make you feel better. You need to start taking responsibility for your own life, just like I did." Pixie broke down in tears and said, "I don't have the means to achieve anything in life. You have everything. As family, we should support each other. If I were in your situation and you were in mine, I'd definitely let you stay." "That's not my fault," I said. "You made your choices, just as I made mine, and now you have to live with the consequences." After that, there was a long and awkward silence. Maybe it was rude of me to say those things, but what other option did I have? They were driving me crazy. My mom was angry, and my sister was hurt and crying. I started to feel a bit guilty about my words, but I repressed my emotions and asked them to leave. My mom looked at me in disbelief. She wanted to argue, but I could see she knew it was futile. She looked at me with cold eyes. "You're making a big mistake," she said, then grabbed my sister's arm, pulled her towards the door, and they left. I closed the door behind them and leaned against it for a moment. I wasn't sure if I had done the right thing. Sometimes I think I'm selfish for not letting my sister move in with me. But then I remember the resentment I faced when I told them about my plans to buy a house. I know my relationship with my mom and sister will never be the same, but I also know I couldn't keep living my life for them. I have to live for myself. Update 3. Thank you for validating my actions. I'm glad so many of you could relate to my feelings. It also makes me reflect on how many of us have been exploited by loved ones in the name of family. Here's something new that happened. In the days that followed, I tried to return to my normal routine, but the tension with my family was always on my mind. Then one afternoon, I came home from work and found them loitering at my entrance. My heart skipped a beat seeing them. I immediately knew it wouldn't be a pleasant visit. They hadn't called or sent a message to let me know they were coming. They just showed up as if they had every right to invade my space. I parked the car and approached them, trying to keep my annoyance under control. "What are you doing here?" I asked, with a tone sharper than I had intended. They both looked miserable. My mom told me their landlord had threatened to evict them if they didn't pay the rent. Apparently, they had been behind on rent for 2 months, and the landlord was pursuing them. I wondered what they had been doing with the money they earned. They lived together, and my mom claims Pixie works hard, so she should definitely be contributing. Why hadn't they paid rent for 2 months? I asked this question, and my mom insisted we go inside to talk, saying they had been standing in the cold for a long time. As I approached the door, I saw 2 suitcases on the porch. I thought, what the hell? My mom said, "Come in, and we'll answer all your questions." I let them in because it was cold outside, but I asked them to leave the luggage outside. Yes, literally. Once inside, my mom told me that Pixie hated her job and wanted to start an online business, so mom had used her savings to help set it up. My mom kept investing money through her salary and credit cards, but after 5 months with no progress, Pixie gave up. Now, mom was out of savings and had a pile of bills. I was stunned. You used your savings for her business and you wanted me to gamble my life savings on it? I could have ended up in the same situation if I had followed your advice. My mom made a gesture for me to stop bad-mouthing Pixie, especially with her present. I said, "I don't care. You can continue enabling her demanding behavior, but don't expect me to pamper her." Pixie started crying and said it was cruel of me to humiliate her when she came to my door asking for help. "I'm not humiliating anyone. I'm just telling the truth. If you don't want to hear it, stay away from me." My mom started sobbing, saying they had come to me as a last hope and I was rejecting them. I said, "It's not my fault you felt entitled to enter my house after being so against the idea of me buying it in the first place." They kept trying to manipulate me until I stood up and asked them to leave. My mom, through her tears, said, "Forget that you have a mother and a sister." I replied, "Sure, it's better to not have family than to have a toxic one like yours." They left. I don't know how to feel about their situation. Would it be cruel to think they brought this misery upon themselves and that it's not my problem? Update 4. Several months have passed since my last update. However, I recently learned about some developments that I thought might interest you. As I mentioned before, I haven't been in direct contact with my mother or my sister Pixie since our last argument. But the world is small, and news travels fast, especially in close-knit communities. A few days ago, I ran into Sarah, the daughter of Martha, a close friend of my mother from church. Sarah and I have known each other for years, though we're not particularly close. We caught up on our lives, and as often happens in these conversations, the topic of family inevitably came up. Sarah asked me, somewhat hesitantly, if I knew anything about my mother and sister's current situation. When I said I didn't, she proceeded to tell me something. It turns out that my mother and Pixie are now homeless. Apparently, after our last confrontation, their financial situation rapidly worsened. They couldn't pay the rent and were evicted from their apartment. With nowhere else to go, my mother turned to Martha, her church friend, begging her to take them in temporarily. Martha, being a single woman who values her independence and peace, was initially not too keen on the idea. However, she agreed to house them, but with the explicit condition that it would only be for a few weeks, just enough time for them to find an alternative. Sarah told me that her mother was exhausted. What was supposed to be a temporary stay of 1 week has now stretched over 2 months. My mother's, and especially Pixie's presence, has completely disrupted Martha's routine and peace. According to Sarah, Pixie has been particularly problematic. Not only has she made no effort to find a job or contribute to the household in any way, but her behavior has also been frankly disrespectful and inconsiderate. For example, Pixie refuses to help with household chores, claiming she's too stressed due to her situation. If she's stressed, she should do something to improve her situation, not keep doing what led her here in the first place. I mean, nothing. Sarah also told me that Pixie invites her friends over without asking, often leaving a mess that Martha has to clean up. She constantly complains about the food Martha prepares, demanding that Martha cook other things and such. My mother, on her part, seems to be stuck in the middle of all this. Sarah said her mother has noticed how my mom tries to mediate between Pixie and Martha, but often ends up defending Pixie's behavior or making excuses for her. What shocked me the most was hearing that Martha has finally reached her limit. A few days ago, she gave my mother an ultimatum, either find a place to move in the next week, or at least Pixie has to leave. Martha expressed that she can no longer handle the stress and tension Pixie brings to her home. Sarah told me all this with a mix of concern and frustration. She said her mother is extremely stressed about the situation and fears it could affect her health. She also mentioned that several church members are aware of the situation and are divided on how to handle it. Some feel compassion for my mother and Pixie, while others are upset about how they are taking advantage of Martha's kindness. What do you all think? Will my mother go with my sister or throw her under the bus to avoid being homeless? Place your bets. I believe my mother will go with Pixie, because she has always defended her no matter what, but that's my assumption based on years of knowing them. Update 5. Well, I have to admit I was wrong. It's human to make mistakes, but it's wise to acknowledge them and correct them. But I don't feel bad or knew I was wrong, rather I feel good. Because I was wrong when 2 weeks ago, in my previous post, I said that my mother wouldn't abandon Pixie, but she did. I would have bet my house, though I'm glad I didn't, because I wouldn't have liked to be in Pixie's situation now. And yes, my mother chose to continue living with her friend rather than with Pixie. At least she has realized that the whole situation has been her mistake. Better late than never. Anyway, from what my friend Sarah has told me, my mother should be looking for a place soon, as even though Martha has let her stay if Pixie left, she doesn't want her to stay forever. As I mentioned in my previous post, Martha is very independent and values living alone. Anyway, my mother isn't like Pixie and has a job, so finding something shouldn't be too hard. As for Pixie, I know she's living with our father. I've mentioned that it's a complicated situation and one for a different post. If I ever feel like it, I might tell that story, but in a separate post because it's a completely different topic. Anyway, since many people wanted an update about my mother and sister, here it is. Maybe if there are a lot of comments asking me to post about my father, I'll do it. But at least this is the end for me regarding the story of my house.